Hey guys, welcome to Make Today Count. So we are here in our brand new studio between my wife Aline and Manny. They have worked around the clock for weeks now, building this new studio and making it look absolutely amazing. So for those of you who have joined us before, we are. This is not a replacement for the regular Barbells and BS podcast. This is a separate series because when we first started Life Barbells and BS, we talked about wanting to add as much value to our listeners and our followers as possible. That's just not all about fitness and diet and exercise and nutrition and those kinds of things. I wanted it, and Claudia wanted it to go into every area of life. So with this, in one of our podcasts, we talked a little bit about ourselves. And if you didn't know, I've been a part of the John Maxwell leadership team for about 4.5, 5 years. John Maxwell is probably known as the world's leading authority on leadership. If you look at some household names, John's been around for over 50 years, but if you look at some household names that we all know, like Tony Robbins and Ed Milet and those kinds of people, these motivational speakers, personal growth guys, almost every single one of them will tell you that John Maxwell is one of their mentors. So I'm privileged enough to be a part of that team, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm obsessed with personal growth and development. It's not all about the gym. It's not all about bodybuilding. It's about growing in every area of life, intellectually, spiritually, physically, every area. So I wanted to take some of my experience and do a sub-series off of what we've already been doing that we will continue to do. With that said, we wanted to say, Claudia, we miss you. She had her show yesterday. She did extremely well, but she's been deep into prep for weeks now, kind of in zombie mode and just hurting. So she went to Chattanooga yesterday, did extremely well, and I'll let her fill you in on the details when she comes back. But congratulations, Claudia, you did great. Let's talk about leadership. And if I would have had this conversation 20 years ago, it wouldn't have seemed so foreign. But some of the things I'm going to say today are going to seem a lot more foreign than they used to be because we've changed so much as a culture and we've changed so much as a society. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. But the word influence has taken on a whole different meaning, especially today because every day we hear the word influencer. So we have millions and millions of online influencers out there. And so the question is, are you influencing in a positive way that helps people grow personally, that helps them improve their relationships, that help them improve their physical health, that it help them improve their spiritual lives? Or are you just influencing in a way that grabs their attention and contributes to this epidemic that we have where we just scroll and scroll and scroll, mindless activity and mindless garbage all day long, every day, and none of it contributes to our growth? So we're going to talk today about what influence used to mean, a positive influence. And that's why I get back to John Maxwell, because he's been doing this a long time. He's influenced leaders of countries all over the world. He's written over 100 books, sold over 124 million copies, translated in 50 different languages, and has shared his life and his experience and his knowledge and shared it with us and actually given us permission to share this with you and licensed us to do that. So one of the books that John wrote is called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And one of those laws is the law of connection. I thought that was fitting to start here because we are living in such a fast-paced world that and I'll get to this a little bit later, but we live so fast-paced, we are rarely connecting with people the way we used to. And I'm going into this with the assumption that if you're watching this, that you're interested in becoming a better leader. And when I say a better leader, we're going to talk a lot about organizational leadership, like business. But please understand that this applies to your families as well. If you're a father, if you're a mother, if you're a husband, you're a wife, it applies to every aspect of your life. So don't just think of this in terms of employee, employer, boss, worker. Don't think of it in those terms. Apply it to every aspect of your life, and you'll see what I'm talking about. One thing you need to understand, and this is where it's going to seem foreign because we live in a world where leaders are driven. We're driven by money. We're driven by material things. We're driven by success. We're driven by power. All of those things. And when those are the main things, when those are your number one priorities, we tend to take the people that help us get there and we push them to the side and we use them as tools to further our careers, but we never really connect with them and help them grow as individuals. And that's what we're going to try to help you do. So I need you to understand this. Great leaders always touch your heart. They always give you their heart before the people underneath them will give you a hand. You have to connect with someone's heart before they're going to go the extra mile for you. Again, that sounds really foreign, especially leaders are typically very action oriented. They're task oriented. They're very type A. They're very driven. If you ask a lot of leaders, they'll tell you, I don't have time to deal with that relationship stuff. Well, make no mistake, if you look at some of the most successful, thriving companies out there, one of the companies that comes to mind, and I'll mention them by name, one of the companies that comes to mind is First Form and Andy Frisella. Andy Frisella, there's a connection with Andy Frisella and John Maxwell. It's funny that you can find these super successful companies who've created a culture about where they take care of their employees, they connect with their employees, and the businesses are going to the moon. It's no coincidence that there's a connection to John Maxwell. So if you look at companies like that, and people like Andy Frisella, very action-oriented, but very dedicated to creating a culture where he connects with his employees. Keep this in mind. People they're never gonna go along with you if they can't get along with you. Anybody who's listening to me right now, you have that person that you work with. It's very difficult to work with. You can work with them, but you don't want to spend a lot of time with them. You can work with them, you can somewhat get along, but by the end of the day, you're ready to not see them again. We all have those people in our lives. That's never going to change. But our ability to step up as leaders and connect with people can really solve some of those issues we have in the workplace. People go the extra mile for people they like. We've all had those bosses. There's all kinds of different categories. There's the boss who's the micromanager. There's the boss who leads us down rabbit holes, who has one idea after another idea and vision after vision after vision, and he tasks all of his people to pour all their time, energy, and effort into accomplishing this vision, and all of a sudden it kicks in. I decided to go a different route. And then they'll turn around and blame you for not accomplishing your regular task while you were chasing those rabbits for your boss. We all know those guys because they're more focused on the vision for themselves than focused on their people. Now, keep in mind as a leader that people buy into, and these are those detail things. Have you ever been, and me and my wife we were actually driving in the car yesterday, and we pulled up to a four-way intersection, and I looked over, and I think this individual had got to the stop sign way before I did, and I was letting her go, and she was literally in the car about to lose her mind because she was upset at me for whatever reason. I looked at my wife, I said, man, I'd hate to be in her house. And I heard John say this one time. Have you ever got on an elevator with somebody and they walked in the elevator and you looked at their face and you're just like, your immediate response was, man, I'm glad I don't have to go home with them. The mark of a good leader is walking into a room, and I tell people all the time, you either add light and add energy to a room, or you're an energy vampire. You walk into a room and because the expression on your face, you just suck the energy right out of the room, and we can identify those people. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago. There was somebody in the gym over a year ago. They were new to the gym. They were joining the team. And I walked up just to introduce myself to the person and say, welcome. The response by this person was, I'm not here to make friends, and immediately dismissed me. So the result of that was this person over the course of the last year really made no friends. She was basically alienated from everybody around us and really never became part of the team because she made it very clear that she didn't want to be a part of the team, that she wasn't there to make friends. Those are the kind of people. So when we're talking about leadership, those are the people you can look at and say, they're dead in the water. Those are not leaders. So that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to develop leaders. Connecting with people, and I'll say this, and this is very, very important. Connecting with people is the leader's responsibility. It is not an option if you want to grow an organization, or if you want to grow your family, or you want to take your family or organization to the next level. It is the responsibility of the leader to connect with the people underneath them, or the people you work with, or the people you live with. You'll have leaders all the time. Some leaders will tell you, my workers or my employees, they're just not coming along. They're just not performing well. They're just not up to speed of where I'd like for them to be. The analogy is, if you've ever been to a rail yard, a big rail yard where there's trains everywhere, have you ever noticed that you'll never see a boxcar running around the rail yard looking for the locomotive? Let that process for a minute. You always see the locomotive moving, backing up to connect with the boxcars. And just because the locomotive backs up and bumps into the boxcar doesn't mean they're connected. Let's put it in perspective. Just because you have a meeting doesn't mean you're connecting. But we have meetings every morning at 10 o'clock. But we have meetings every Friday at 10 o'clock. But I went to lunch with that person. So what happens, we're bumping into each other. We're doing this. We're smacking up against each other, and there's never any connection. So when that locomotive backs up, it couples with the boxcars, and that's when they can all move in the same direction. That's a great analogy to think about, because for so long, me and my wife both were a part of an organization where it was meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and it was this mundane, same old. Literally, the people, the workers were talking about how absolutely useless those meetings were, because it was preventing us from getting things done on a weekly basis just for the sake of meeting, just for the sake of doing this, but there's no connection. The team's not moving in the same direction. So remember, it's the responsibility of the leader always to go down and connect with the people beneath them. Back in the 70s, there used to be a term. It was called management by walking. Leaders always walk slowly through the crowd. Let that sink in for a minute. Leaders always walk slowly through the crowd, and that's what lent to that term in the 70s, management by walking. So the managers would go out each day and they would walk through the plants, the factories, whatever it was, and they would meet each worker individually. They would have just a brief conversation. How are you? How's the family? Ask questions, connect with the workers. And that was a very popular management style back then. We've gotten away from that, except with some companies that still do it very well today. So they've created that culture. So with that said, how do we connect with people? So now I'm going to give you a list. This is where you go down. If you want to write this down, obviously you don't have to write it down. You can refer to the video. So number one would be connect with yourself. I see this all the time, that we have coaches. So we call ourselves a coach. Just because we desire to be in a field because we're passionate about something, let's apply it to personal training, because that's what we do, right? It's what Claudia and I both have done for 30 years. Just because I'm passionate about working out, just because I'm passionate about bodybuilding, does not mean that my gifts are to coach somebody else to do that. Think about that for a minute. Just because I'm passionate about something does not qualify me to coach somebody else. Because coaches, people that are true coaches, people that are true leaders, they have that gift inside them. It just comes naturally to them. And one of the things that the very first thing to do when you're connecting with your people is you have to be able to connect with yourself. So when we're dealing with our own personal growth, our own personal development, we have to learn, is healing our own demons, healing our own past, dealing with our own insecurities, learning to accept ourselves, learning to love ourselves, developing that security, learning from our mistakes, learning from our failures, learning how to be transparent about those things so we can pass that knowledge on to the people that we're trying to coach. So connecting with ourselves, without the ability to connect with myself, I have no ability to connect with you. Number two, being able to share with openness and sincerity. You cannot be an effective leader if you're not willing to be open, honest, and sincere about yourself. People want to know the real you. They don't want to know this fake version of you who's a closed book, who puts up walls. They want to be able to relate to the person that they're following. So that's really important. Number three, and this one's really important, you absolutely must live your message. You have to live your message. When people hear your words, they're going to look at your life and see if your life lines up with those words. Have you ever seen, I call them a Facebook evangelist. These are our keyboard warriors. And so what you see is these people all day long, every day, and they're preaching on Facebook and preaching on Facebook and preaching on Facebook, and you meet them in person, and they are the most rude, off-putting, non-caring, non-giving, just you don't want to be around them, right? That's the person whose life does not line up with their message, right? So they got this message they're putting out to the world. Then you meet them in person, it's completely the opposite. The people underneath you, the people that follow you, have to see those things line up. That's extremely important. Number four, know your people. This goes back to the walking slowly through the crowd. Take some time. If you're a personal trainer, my goodness, we do this all day long, every day, and we talked before about sometimes how we know a little too much about people's lives. But when you're talking about exercise, nutrition, fitness, weight loss, those kinds of things, 9 times out of 10, what you'll find is that someone's inability to have success with weight loss, fitness, health, it has a lot less to do with the actual checking the boxes and eating the right food and doing the right exercises and using the right form, and a lot more to do with some other things that are affecting them emotionally, some things in their past, some things that still bother them, their insecurities, their fear of success, their fear of failure. All of those things. As a coach, it's our job to help recognize those things and to help that person work through that process. It's not just about counting reps and giving nutrition advice and those kinds of things. So know your people, know the people that you're trying to help. And the better you know them, the more they're going to buy into your vision and how you expect them to do things and how you want them to be successful. Number 5, communicate on their level. This is really important. You don't want to be an educator. You want to be a communicator. So again, we always go back to the personal training thing. You got these personal trainers, especially the new ones. They want to use these big, huge words, and they want to talk above you, and they expect you to understand what they're saying. When you're a good communicator, you're able to take the deep, difficult topics, bring those down to a level that people can understand, so they can easily apply those things to their lives quickly. So communicate on their level. Number 6, give yourself totally to the vision and the message. Give yourself totally to the vision and the message. You have to buy into the vision and the people. Now let's break that down just a little, because this is an important one. If you're a big relationship person, so that's kind of how I'm wired. I'm stronger in the relationship department than I am in the vision department. So I have a vision, but I always go back to the relationships first. It always kind of takes precedent. So because I'm such a relationship driven person, those relationships sometimes will distract me and draw me away from the vision. So what you have to do, you have to balance those two. You have to be completely dedicated to both, to the people and the vision. So if I'm all about the relationships and I lose sight of the vision, I've got great friendships, I've got great relationships, but we're not going anywhere. And then if I buy into the vision, but I don't buy into my people, then I'm just serving myself. The vision becomes all about me, where I'm going, what I'm going to acquire, and the people underneath me are just tools to help me get there. So either way, you fail both ways. Number 8, share how the vision and or the message has affected you. If you would have, I was thinking about this the other day, that when you hear these principles, like the law of connection, if somebody would have told me this when I was 20, then my only choice would be to have trusted the person who told me. So if we hear this principle, if we hear this law, we hear whatever it is, when we're in our 20s, when we're very young, the only way we're going to buy into it is if we trust the person who's sharing it with us. But the neat thing about being older is you can learn these things and you're able to look back over your life and go, yeah, that applies 100% of the time. I've seen it work or not work over and over and over and over again. So it's really important, especially as we get older, those of you who have more life experience, to be able to share this vision and this message and what it's done to help you grow as a person, and that'll get them to buy into the vision even more. Number 9, and this is the last one, offer direction and hope. This is really important. John Maxwell, he says this all the time. Leaders are hope dealers. He said, so when somebody comes up and asks you what you do, I'm a hope dealer. I give hope. That means a lot to me because we live in a day and age right now where we are fed this constant diet of information that divides us. We're divided by ideology. We're divided by politics. We're divided by religion. We're divided by gender. We're divided by race. All day long, it's in our face constantly. Our differences instead of our similarities. So my job and my vision for what we're doing here is to help everybody go through their day, go through their lives, trying to find the things that we have in common. Because I guarantee you, if you'll slow down long enough, if you'll take a few extra minutes just to have a conversation, if you'll listen a little bit better, you'll find out that we have a lot more in common that we do not in common. So that's really, really important. Remember, leaders are dealers in hope. So if you're somebody that goes through your day, and again, everybody has the ability to be a leader. Some have more capacity than others, but leadership is learned. It is a learned skill. But it's also understanding that most people will continue living their lives the way they do. They'll continue following. But I'm telling you, there's somebody out there, and my wish, my desire is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people would start to tune in to what we're doing here and to decide that they want to be a leader instead of a follower, that they'll want to get off social media and start complaining about how the world works. They'll start stop complaining about the opposite sex. They'll stop complaining about our government. They'll stop complaining about everything in the world and start focusing on waking up every day and doing something to offer something better to the world, to help the people around them improve their lives, to use their life experience to help others come along. That's my goal. So in closing, I wanted to read you something, and this defines what connection is. So in 1994, I think the his name was Herb Kelleher. He was the CEO of Southwest Airlines. And in 1994, on Boss's Day, 16,000 employees raised $60,000 to run a full-page ad in the USA Today, thanking Herb for his efforts. And here's what it said. For remembering every one of our names, it said USA thanking Herb for his efforts. The ad read, for remembering every one of our names, for supporting the Ronald McDonald House, for helping load baggage on Thanksgiving, for giving everyone a kiss, and we mean everyone, for listening, for running the only profitable major airline, for singing at our holiday party, for singing only once a year, for letting us wear shorts and sneakers to work, for golfing at the Love Classic with only one club, for out-talking Sam Donaldson, for riding your Harley Davidson into Southwest headquarters, for being a friend, not just a boss. 16,000 employees. And the piece went on to say, signed your 16,000 employees. You don't see very many CEOs like that anymore. I read a little bit more about this guy. Apparently he was an amazing guy. But that was in 1994. So as we think about moving forward, we think about what kind of legacy we want to live or we want to leave. That's my legacy. The legacy of helping the people that I come into contact with have more hope, have more knowledge, have more understanding about themselves, have more understanding about the world, to be able to be better leaders. And I'll close with this because, again, we spent a lot of time talking about it seemed organizational. But parents and your children, my wife knows this because we had so many conversations about this because, I was raised in an era where you were kind of seen and not heard. You were taught the basic principles of life. Comply, do what I tell you to do, sit down, be quiet, clean your room, do this, and all is well. We live in a world now where there's no excuse for that type of parenting. And again, I'm giving you my opinion because this same law of connection applies to our family. It's my job as a father to connect with my son. It's my job as a husband to connect with my wife, to know her needs, her desires, what she's thinking, to recognize strengths in our son and where he's going. So we talked about the meeting. So we're having meetings. So you have a family meeting, and the family meetings are usually geared around, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how I want you to correct it. If you don't correct it, these are the consequences. Okay, good. That's all great and fine, but we're teaching compliance, right? Teaching compliance is fine, but it's also very important that you connect with your children just like you're connecting with your employees, just like you're connecting with the people that follow you. It's understanding what makes them tick. It's understanding what drives them. It's understanding their talents, their weaknesses, their strengths, all of these different things. So you can help add value to as they grow, they don't just hear and see and feel, do what I say. They understand why. They understand the value of work ethic. They understand the value of doing something right the first time. They understand the value of taking pride in what you do. It's connection. It's always connection, because when you get to a point where you're doing this with your family members, you're just kind of just banging into each other and not connecting, then the same thing happens with a family that happens with an organization. You start to kind of get disconnected and things seem awkward and weird. So I hope this helped. I'm really looking forward to doing these a lot. I could probably do these for the next 20 years and never run out of material. So connect with us, reach out with questions, let us know how you like it. We'll be back with Life Barbells and BS. We're going to have a new episode of the fitness podcast coming out real soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and be kind to one another.